to their app.
Okay, that's okay. We'll go ahead and start the class now.
Legal app now.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday is their class.
Next Wednesday,
Yes.
there is class on next Wednesday.
Oh, is there Monday and Wednesday? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
we
just
only have
Thursday
Thursday and
Friday.
Friday off here.
So
Yep.
we aren't affected by it.
Oh, that's
By the
cool.
holiday.
By Thanksgiving,
Yeah,
correct.
no. There are no rest
All right, so I'll just kind of briefly and quickly go over the regulation and policy
Oh, yeah.
7145, which actually does impact more than just one class. So this class can be potentially impacted because I won't be able to use Moodle. But on the other hand, many of other classes can also be impacted. So basically, what it is it's a pair of documents. One is a regulation and one is a policy. And the policy is the one that is driving the regulation. The regulation spells out the details of what needs to be done. So I'm not going to bore you with the actual document, which also is here. I marked up, the portion that I think is actually kind of important. So, well, I can just kind of go to the one that I've circled. So right here in section 1.3, it talks about what is authorized. So authorized platform means a learning management system like Moodle, or a publisher website, or MyMathLab.
Or D2L.
Is authorized. Huh?
D2L is I'm at.
D2L is a authorized platform. It is a platform that is already authorized.
Right.
As authorized by the Los Rios Community College District in consultation with the EdTech Committee. Now, this part is kind of interesting because the EdTech Committee is faculty staffed, okay, but it does not have the actual permission or does not have the actual authority to say yes, this is authorized. The district is only going to authorize in consultation with the EdTech. In other words, it can disagree with the assessment of the EdTech Committee and say, we do not want to authorize this anyway, okay? As appropriate for the delivery of online instruction for online classes and the online portions of hybrid classes. So that means there is a way out of this thing, okay? Don't teach online classes. Okay, for people who just do not want to use anything other than do not want to use just D2L, they can always choose not to teach online or hybrid classes. But this is a hybrid class, okay? And it goes on and talks about this one here, where an instruction activity creates an educational record as defined by FERPA. FERPA is you can look it up online and figure out what it is. It protects student privacy basically. Distance education courses shall utilize an authorized platform. The use of platforms not authorized by the district is prohibited. So so in order to use any type of platform that can potentially store an educational record, it has to be pre-authorized. Now, what an educational record is basically submission or work from from student, and a grade associated with it. If it's just work from you, it does not count as an educational record. It is just work that you're turning in. But once it has a grade associated with it, then it becomes an educational record. So I won't bore you with the stuff that is not related. This is the regulation. The regulation says access for the disabled, blah blah blah. This is okay. I can understand it. Okay, ADA compliance is important. So we're gonna move on. The red ones are the ones that we need to pay attention to. This is when things start to get interesting. Huh?
Can you show us the ADA one a little bit?
The ADA one shows the American with Disabilities Act of 1990, blah blah blah. So all the platforms that we use, must comply to ADA requirements. But this one is interesting. For distance education courses, the district shall maintain records and report data through the Chancellor's Office Management Information System (MIS) on the number of students and faculty participating in new courses or sections of established courses offered through distance education. So they want to be able to take roll basically, of how many people are in the class, blah blah blah, like that.
Oh, so they're talking about class meeting by class meeting. You're supposed to report.
It does not say that, it does not say, but it says to maintain records. Report required data to various regulating agencies respecting their definitions. So that's the reporting piece, and then here, in order to meet federal, state, ACCJC, which is our accreditation organization, distance education requirement and guidelines, a LRCCD learning management system platform or proposed platform is required to blah 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 blah, and allow for district level access, tracking, and reporting of communications and interaction to meet state and federal requirements. I can do that with Moodle, not a problem, okay, because the back end of Moodle, which as a database, is completely open, okay. I can say, okay, give me the query that you need, I'll run it, give you the result, not a problem, okay. But when this is on a publisher website, My Math Lab, that can get a little bit difficult. Point number 7, have an LRCCD appropriate licensing agreement. So if it's a publisher website, it's not going to have a licensing agreement at the district level. Okay, it's just a resource for students to use. So the licensing is between the student and the publisher website, not between the district and the publisher website. Be designed to integrate. Now this is also a killer. Be designed to integrate with student record system for course enrollment and grading data. So I don't know how they do My Math Lab right now. I would assume they're individually enrolled, student individually enrolled. The professor would set up a course construct, and the students have to manually attach to the course construct, and so that's how they enroll in the class. Okay, and this as a requirement means that the My Math Lab will have to integrate with our PeopleSoft system. So the enrollment is automatic. Yep. Yep. So it's not going to work very easily. So we have SCORM compliance, have reporting tools to meet district need to demonstrate quality and effectiveness. So these are all requirements of the platform. And I think the ones that I circled in red are the ones that that will stop a lot of platforms from being authorized. Well, you need to let them know. You need to let them know because I wrote this little piece here, and I'm not going to bore you with the rest because I just talked about all this stuff here. But in the last section, what does it mean? It means if you use anything other than DTL, you may be in trouble. That's plain and simple. And what we can do, this is actually intended for other faculty, but it also applies to you guys. Basically, you just need to let people know about the potential impact of this kind of regulation. Okay, and in the end, whether I'm here or not does not matter. Okay, it is you guys that really matters. Okay, what is a community college? It is a means for me to make a living. I'm not saying that is not important to me. It is important to me, but what is the mission of the college itself? Who are the reasons why we are here? Well, exactly. Yep. So that means, if you think this has an impact on your education or the quality of education that you're getting with online or hybrid classes, you need to let your teacher know about this. Okay, this is coming, and it's coming soon. Okay, this will be coming as soon as within maybe 1 or 2 semesters at the most, because accreditation is next October, and this has to be in place, possibly enforced by that time. Okay, so it doesn't give professors a whole lot of time to react to it and go like, oh, I cannot use My Math Lab. What am I going to do with my classes now? Because I weave my curriculum around the resources available in My Math Lab, and now it's not. Okay. So I'm not going to spend any more time on this. For those of you who are interested, I can send you the actual documents. Nothing is actually secretive, because the meetings and the regulation, they are openly discussed in public meetings. Okay, so none of these documents is a top secret thing that I'm not supposed to disclose. I'm not working here for the CIA or the NAS or any one of those organizations where Tacky cannot do any type of whistleblowing.
You're not getting any money from Cisco.
And I'm not getting any money from Cisco either. Okay, and Noodle is not paying me anything either, right? So anyway, that's just something that I think some of you may want to be aware of. Okay. All right. So getting back to app programming. Okay, app programming is kind of cool because the web page might be temporarily down. Okay, fine. That's okay. That's just my splash page. Yeah, it's not really the end of the world. But we were talking about screen 3, which is the data entry screen. This is the screen that actually enters the score for one particular shooting target.
Did you post the app from last time, this copy?
Okay, I'll have to remember to do that, but I can't do it right now, because it's just going to be slowing down the class a little bit. Okay, but I will, remember to do that, hopefully between the two classes. So anyway, this is what we got last time. Okay, last time we worked on the distance thing. So now it is now reporting in yards. We have a checkbox to indicate whether the target is hit or not, and we have a save button. And I think we were not working on the save button yet. We were working on it a little bit, but not completely yet. So the save button is going to close the screen with a certain value, and that value, which is the score of this particular target, for this particular round of a target, because a target can have multiple trials, is going to be sent back to whichever screen starts it to begin with. Now that screen, the screen or the activity that starts this particular screen, does not even have to be in the same application. It can be a different application. Now that is the part why this is really flexible, because it's no longer requiring to talk to the same application. You can talk across application if you use your closed screen with value blah 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 instead of using TinyDB. TinyDB can communicate across activities or screens of the same application, but not across applications. This, on the other hand, can talk across applications. Okay. Are there any questions about what we have done so far? I missed one thing here. Okay, and I have the lane number that will be passed to me by the starting screen. The actual target, which is either near or far, that is also passed to me. I missed one thing because each target has 2 trials. So I missed the label for this is trial 1 or this is trial 2. This screen is not supposed to handle all of that stuff. This screen is just for entering the data for one particular try on one particular target. Okay, so I kind of missed that part. Yep.
Could you just make that screen handle 2? I mean, very easily by adding another checkbox and saying maybe a text box saying target 1 and the next text box above the
yep. This is what
thing
I'm going to
saying
do.
target 2.
I put another label here, and I just change the label to attempt. So that's going to be a number, attempt 1.
Something like that for that? A radio box?
A radio box.
Yeah, it's 2 checkboxes, but only one can be selected at a time.
I want the other screen to kind of automatically determine this, because otherwise you're relying on the user to remember is this attempt 1 or attempt 2. But in this case, the whatever screen send you to this particular screen will basically handle all of this stuff. So this screen itself has no control over it. It will only display it. So we'll go ahead and change the font size. Now I understand this is a 20, so this has to be 22 just to make the match. That's all. And the bitmap here can be a little bit shorter. Let's say 150. Because it's far enough. We cannot accidentally hit the save button when someone just wants to indicate a hit. Okay. So when we look at the actual screen on the emulator, hopefully it's not crashing it. Nope. Okay, it's good. Takes a little bit of time. Takes a little bit more than a little bit of time. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now, which is okay. I mean, that's fine. So now we can work on the screen that sends us to this particular screen, okay, to enter a score, okay. So the next screen or the previous screen that sends us to this one is going to keep track of the lane number. It's going to keep track of the near versus the far target. It's going to keep track of the attempt number, okay, on each target. So this screen is only used to enter the distance and the target, whether it's a hit or not. And the other screen will be basically managing the rest of the match. Okay. Are there any questions about this part? Okay, there are no questions about this part. Let's try on the emulator. With the emulator, when I click save, it doesn't actually close. Oh, it does close the screen. Okay, which is what it's supposed to do. Because when we hit save, it's supposed to go back to the previous screen, which is that's what it's supposed to do. So now it is supposed to go back to screen 1, and I think it's just loading it, which is fine. Okay. All right. So now we can work on the screen 2, which is the one screen that has most of the control elements, like managing the match itself. Okay. So we'll go ahead and switch to screen 2. Go to the designer and say, okay, now what do we do with screen 2? Now, screen 2 is the match management screen. Okay, that's the one that is managing the whole match. So we'll go ahead and you can have a main screen as a home screen so you can navigate to different parts, but I'm going to make this simple and make this one the match management screen. And with the match management part, you have control over the number of lanes. You have control over which is your starting lane, okay, which is a big thing, and it will automatically update the numbers, unless you want to override. So we do need to provide a mean to override something in order to get this to work. Okay, so let's kind of keep track of what we need to do here. Unfortunately, we do have a document already for that purpose, which is something that all developers should do, is to use a document to keep track of stuff that can be easily forgotten. So we have it already tracked here, and the layout or the detail of data is here. We are currently done with this part. Okay, that screen 3 is going to deal with the timestamp, the gauged distance, and also whether it is a hit or a miss. So what we are lacking right now is something to take care of the rest. Okay. So as far as the log is concerned, we need to have some way to enter the competitor's name. The date is not too big of a deal because we can always use the system time, use the clock, to remember the date. The where, we can get it from the GPS. If you want to make the app GPS capable, we can get it from the GPS itself. And the picture, I think that's completely optional. We can make it a feature of the next release. But the main focus is, if I want to make this an application that is actually useful, I still have to keep track of the lanes, keep track of the targets, and keep track of the attempts. Okay, so these are the things that I still have to keep track of. As far as data entry is concerned, there are really several ways to do this. Okay, I can use text fields all over this thing here, and basically use those text fields for people to enter the data, which is not actually very desirable. Okay, because it means if someone touches something wrong, pop up the keyboard, and it's easy to overtype something without, and it also it will also clutter up the screen itself. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and just I'll just use labels for now. This button actually doesn't do anything, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Okay. But I'll use a whole bunch of labels to kind of remember what we have to do here. So at the minimum, we have to keep track of a few things. At the minimum, we have to keep track of the lane number. Okay. And we have to keep track of On each lane we have 2 targets. Okay, so we have to keep track of the target. So it's either the near or the far target. And we also have to keep track of the attempt number, because on each target, most competitions have 2 attempts. So we have attempt number here, and then we need a button to enter the data for that particular attempt. Okay. Okay. So these are the things that we need to kind of at least these are the minimum that we have to keep track of. All right. So this part has to do with the actual match itself. The way I'm doing it right now is putting it directly into the main screen, which also means it's not really contained inside any type of container, which is not very good for organization. So you might want to, if you have something like this, you might want to put it into use a layout and use a vertical arrangement in this case, and just kind of put items into it. I think we can drag it. Yep. So we can drag the labels into a vertical arrangement item here. And what that allows you to do is, if you need to hide all of these items, they can all be hidden by hiding the arrangement itself, okay? Which is kind of handy, okay? Just in case you want to hide it, you can do it all. Okay. The next thing we want to do is to say, okay, the lane number is a number that is automatically increasing. Okay, so as people click on score attempt, it will automatically increase. But occasionally, some people might want to go back and say, oh, you know what, I want to reset the lane number because I put in the wrong number or something like that. Okay, so occasionally, this is not something. This may be something that people want to go back and change. So we can turn this into a button if you want to. Turn this into a button so that when you click on the lane number, it gives you the option to change it. Okay, and if you don't, then it will automatically increase, based on the number of attempts per target, and based on the number of targets per lane, it will automatically increment everything. Okay, so that's kind of that's what I want to do. All right. So first thing first. Okay. The first thing is, how do I keep track of all of this stuff here, the current state of the match? Okay, I call it the state of the match because I have to keep track of the attempt number, the target, and the lane number. And the answer seems to be pretty easy. Oh, easy. We can use global variables, right? That's the easiest solution, is to go to the block screen and allocate global variables to keep track of the attempt number, the target, and also the lane number. Now the target part is kind of interesting because most of the time people keep track of left versus right, and not really near versus far, because we go in one direction, usually goes from left to right, the same way we read in English. So I might change that later. Okay, but nonetheless, how do we keep track of all of this stuff here? You have to kind of think about what can happen when someone is using an application like this. Okay. What if someone accidentally killed the application? Now, if someone kills the application, the global variables will all disappear. And the next time you start the application, it will have to start from scratch again. Yep.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
I don't know if this can pertain to App Better. You were talking about killing an application. Some applications we love to keep running back behind the scenes.
Right.
And I'm curious if this is one of those applications, and if it takes extreme programming to do that, or if this particular App Inventor cannot have the ability to do that.
No, App Inventor does not give you a whole lot of options to control, whether it's a background, application or not.
Okay.
Yep. And the next class, might get into some of that stuff, where you can keep something, running in the background. Android keeps a hierarchy of applications. So when it runs out of memory, there's a hierarchy, and it will go through the hierarchy based on the assigned priority, and say, okay, these are not important. I can kill these applications or these activities, in order to have more memory available for whatever the end user wants to do now at this moment. Okay, but in App Inventor, we don't have the ability to make an application that always runs in the background, or at least has a higher priority and less likely to be kicked out, automatically. But applications crash too, so you kind of have to prepare for, what if the application crashes, right? Or what if somebody just turned off the device, drop it, and the battery falls off, right? Okay, so that means global variables are not too bad, but we also want something else so that the application has the ability to restore back to where it was before. Go ahead. TinyDB.
And roll sheet.
Yep, row sheet. I don't need to take row anymore because I think we passed the day to drop. So I cannot drop anyone either.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, either just chapter is about to happen like Friday or something like that.
I think it already happened. Well, it's okay. It's not that important. Okay. So that means instead of working with just the screen here, I'm gonna go to blocks because now I have something to do, and there's a warning here: companion connection error. Okay, so that's just companion complaining. The problem is I cannot work on the blocks while it is trying to connect again. Oh, the entire emulator died. I don't remember clicking it close. Okay, so I can still talk, and plan ahead, while the emulator is starting up. So in this case, we want to keep track of everything with, once again, a key value pair, and then whenever it's appropriate, we will save the entire key value pair into the TinyDB. So when we start the application can actually check, did I close cleanly from the previous time? If not, give the end user an option to restore back to where it was before. Okay, so we'll deal with that part first. Okay, so we won't even worry about how to talk to screen 3 at this point. We just want to be able to restore back to a current state and make that happen. Okay, so for that to happen, we need a whole bunch of global variables. So we'll go to initialize global variables here, and the first thing we have to initialize with would be match information. Okay, so match information is one single list that keeps track of all the information about a particular match. Okay, it's going to be a key value pair, which means it's very flexible. Okay, we can add additional attributes to a match whenever it is appropriate, and we don't have to change the rest of the program just to deal with it. So as a list, it is initially going to be an empty list. Okay, so initially there's nothing there. Okay, and now we have to go back to designer and determine, okay, we have lane number, we have the target, and we have the attempt number. All right, so we have all of those things to keep track of. I'm going to make a procedure to initialize a particular match. So this procedure is called Initialize Match, which basically means, if a match is not already in progress, we're starting a new match, how are we going to initialize everything? Okay, that's what the Initialize Match is for. Now, Initialize Match also has needs one thing from the main screen here, or there has to be a way to determine that. Okay, and that has to do with the starting lane. The starting lane is not necessarily 1, because most people think, oh, we just start with lane 1, but that's not the case. Because in most matches, we have, let's say we have 20 lanes, and typically there will be about 30 to 40, at least 20 competitors. So if everybody starts on lane 1, then you have a whole line of people waiting on lane 1 as people move on to different lanes, and that's not a very efficient use of the range, the shooting range. So what people do, or what match directors do, is they assign one team of 2 people to start on lane 1, the next team starts on lane 2, the next one starts on lane 3. So even though there will still be some waiting around because some people takes forever to fire that one shot, for the most part, it's going to be all in parallel. So there will be like all 20 lanes or whatever 15 lanes or so will be all in use at the same time. And this is one of the things where people do not remember is, oh, where did I start? Okay, what was my starting lane? So we need some way to enter our starting lane, and I will also drag a really useful component into it right now, and I'll show you why we have to use it later on. Yes?
You might want to change the button. I'm just a suggestion to record score.
Record score?
What do you think about that?
Okay, start time. But I'm going to include one thing that will be useful. Right now, it doesn't seem to be useful. It's a notifier. Okay, a notifier is very useful for many different purposes. But I'll just keep it around for now because initialize is going to require getting that done. So I go to blocks and I go to initialize match, and there are several things it has to do with match information. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with that. Okay. The first thing is, what is my starting lane? Because the starting lane determines what is the lane number. Okay, the target is okay, because we usually go from left to right, and it's just left or right, or we can label it 1 and 2. The attempts always starts with 1. I mean, that one is kind of a given. So those are not the issues. So for initialized match to work, it's going to be a little bit tricky, because if I use initialize match to start a notifier box to have the end user to enter something, it's not going to get it. Do you see what I mean? No? Okay. Initialize match can only be the receiving part, because when you have a notifier that allows people to enter a number, it generates a new event when someone enters a number and press the OK button. Okay. So that's why it cannot be initiated from initialize match. It has to be initiated from somewhere else. Yep.
Would this maybe be one of the few times, and you don't want to? I know you don't want to use it many times, where you would use a global that wasn't a constant, because you could initialize a variable and connect it to that button where you're putting in what attempt number it is, and it could constantly change as somebody puts in what the what lane number it is. Or,
right.
What do you think about that?
But I have a slightly better solution.
Okay.
Which is to parameterize initialize match. So initialize match itself is not going to trigger any end user interface to pop up. It will be responding to it, but it's not even attached to the event handler of when a notifier box is when someone enters something in the notifier box, it's not even attached directly to the event handler. This is just a subroutine. You call it, it will do its thing. Okay, so I will leave it up to some other logic to determine when to call this. Okay, but once we know what is the starting lane, we can now do the rest of the initialization. Okay, for one particular match. So now we can go to all the list functions here, and this is just going to be one huge make a list. Okay, and the list that we are dealing with is match information. So we'll set global match information to a somewhat big list here. It has to record the starting lane. It has to record the current target, okay, because each lane has multiple targets, and it also has to remember the attempt on the target. Okay, so all of that information will be recorded here. There'll be 3 items in the list.
What about the score? What about the score?
The score is not there yet. Okay, this is just really saying, okay, where are we in the match? Okay, we are not scoring anything. This is the next item to be scored. When I click record score, this is what is going to score. Okay. So the list, each item of this list, because it is a key value pair list, so each item is a pair, and the only way we use to implement a pair is another list. So we use another list making here, and we just kind of duplicate it a few times. So that basically sets up the structure of how to initialize match information. And now we need more global variables, because the key or the tag of each item, I don't want to just spell it, because if I spell it, I can spell it wrong, be inconsistent in the same program, in the same screen, and that's not going to work well. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll have a whole bunch of global variables that ends with str string. Okay, because the only purpose is just to spell out and use internally, so that I can use those names consistently. So now we will have a whole bunch of global variables. So we'll just drag 3 of them here. And the first one is going to be lane number string. The second one is going to be target, okay? Target string. And the third one is going to be attempt. And then we'll use a whole bunch of text blocks here to initialize these items. Yep.
Small question.
Mhm.
I noticed you're using a lot of strings.
Yep.
But I noticed in a class that I'm taking, strings are a tougher type of data to deal with, other than numbers. And in this particular case, you could actually use all 3 of those as a number. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
And what do you mean by as a number?
Well, for instance, lane
So
number is a number. You could actually use it as a number rather than a string.
So you basically fix it to 1, and the next one is 2,
right,
the next one
and
is
then
3.
target is actually a 1 or a 2 or whatever. Target, no, near or far, isn't it?
Right, but that's the value. This is the key.
Okay.
So this is the key, which means it has to be.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't want it to make it, I don't want the list to be position sensitive, because if it is position sensitive and you look at the representation in TinyDB, it will be pretty hard to figure out what it is actually representing. When you have a key value pair, then you can actually visually inspect the TinyDB and kind of get an idea of what it is. It's easier for debugging purposes.
Right, for debugging. Okay, I see.
So the first one is going to be lane number as a string, and then we have target as a string, and then we have attempt as a string, and these will be the values here. This one is easy. Okay, the lane number, the initial lane number, is the starting lane number. So we'll just grab our parameter and stick it here. As far as the target is concerned, we can either number it 1, 2, 3, or left to right. 1, 2, 3 probably makes more sense to most people, so I'm going to use a number here. And most people count from 1, even though programmers usually count from 0. But since this is a application for target shooters and not for programmers, starting with 1 is probably a better way to do it. And the same thing about attempt number, we start with 1 and not 0. Okay.
We could always, if we really want to get fancy, have it start at 0, and then when it displays, it just adds 1.
It could do that, but there's no particular reason to do that. Because internal is not used as an index into something, and even if you use it as an index into a list, App Inventor 2 starts with 1. So it just kind of makes sense in this context. Yep.
It'd be nice if they had their regular mode and then a quote programming mode where it says certain things like to start at 0 and.
Yep.
That'd be nice.
One more question. Is
Yes.
it easier to use pairs than to, for instance, make a list that is connected in with 3 different values, or 4 different values, or 5?
Are you talking about position sensitive list? Like the first item is something?
Sort of like, a name. Well, in this case, a lane number connected to a target connected to an attempt in one list, rather than having to make paired lists. You'd make a list with three items or 4 items in it. Is it just that? Is it easier to use pairs?
Pairs are easier to use once you get used to it, because you're retrieving a value based on its tag,
Right.
and the tag itself spells out what it is.
Okay.
And also when you look at the actual list, it also says the same thing, because the key of a particular pair is also represented in the list. So that makes it more user friendly for one thing, and two, you don't have to worry about what is the position of something. When you have like 20, 30, or 40 things in a list, it's pretty hard to keep track of what is the the position number of the item that I want to retrieve. It is easier to remember the name of the thing that I want to retrieve. So that's why key value pairs has its value because of that. All right, so this is how we keep this is how we initialize the starting lane, and we need some way for an end user to enter the starting lane here. Okay, so the question is, how do we do that, right? If you go to the designer, there's one place where we can actually make it kind of interactive. Well, we can. Okay, I'll give you the answer, and then you guys can tell me how well you like it. Okay. We'll drag a button into where lane is, and we'll change the label to lane number. Lane number. Long press to set starting. Okay. All right. So I can make the font a little bit larger, just so that it's easier to read. Because okay, there we go. So this becomes a button now. It's not just a label, it is now a button. Someone can actually click it. Now, if someone clicks it, like a regular click, it triggers one particular event. A long click triggers a different event. So having one single user interface element here now has two purposes, okay? So someone can say, oh, you know what, I just messed up the last lane, I need to go back to a certain lane. They can kind of manually say, okay, even though I'm supposed to be on this lane here, I can manually say, okay, I want to be in that other lane. Or someone can long press this and say, I'm going to initialize the whole thing and starting with this particular lane. So whether you want to do it this way or not, it's up to you, but it does help to reduce the number of user interface elements on the screen itself. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way now, and we'll see whether it causes problems later or not. So now that we have a button and it has a particular purpose, let's rename the button first. Okay, that's one thing that we should be doing as we start to assign specific meanings to things. So button 2 should now be replaced to button lane number. It deals with lane numbers. Okay, and we switch back to blocks, and then we go to lane number, and then we say when we have a long click on this button, we're going to trigger the initialization of the whole thing. Okay, this is the beginning of the match. We'll let the end user specify the starting lane and reset all the numbers back to the beginning part. Okay. All right. Well, that sounds easier than it is. Because what we're gonna do is we have to use a notifier. So the long press is not gonna do anything. All it's gonna do is to have the notifier to start a dialog box that allow people to enter some text. So it would be, let's see here. Well, it's either choose dialog, which is based on buttons, or text dialog. Okay, so that's what we want. All right, so we want to show text dialog so that people can actually enter a number, and then we'll specify the text, the message here, and also the title here. If I'm really anal about this and I say, okay, I want this application to run, in different countries with localization, I should never use, the text element here. Okay, I'll just explain what I mean by that. In most applications, this is not a good idea. Okay, enter starting number. Okay, that's not a good idea. Because if I sprinkle text like this all over the place, when it's time to localize the application, like translating it to, say, German, because field target is really big in Germany as well, then someone has to go over this entire program and find out every single little piece and change them. Okay, so it's not like just one single file containing all of these text strings. So it's not the best way to do it, but based on how much time I have to illustrate the application, and also what is my main focus, I'm gonna do it like this here. Okay. If you want your application to be easy to translate, one thing you can do is to store all of those strings into a file. Okay, that's how people usually do it. And then you can exactly. Then, but then you also have to know which string or which part of the file you're referring to. So then you have to actually remember the number. Okay, I'm retrieving the first string of the file, the second string of the file, but it makes translation a whole lot easier because you just present the whole file to someone and say, can you translate these words or these sentences, phrases one by one, and give me the translated file. Then you transplant the translated file into your application and you run it, and voila, everything is translated. Okay, so but I'm not too concerned about that part at this point, so I'm going to do it the shortcut way, which is not entirely the best way to do it. Okay. So I'm going to specify the title as I think I'll use this as the title and change the message here for starting a match. Okay, enter the starting lane number, and in the message it says for starting a match, what is first initial lane starting. Or something like that. I mean, you can refine that later. Okay, that's not the main focus here. So the main focus is this is going to show me a text dialog, and I cannot call Initialize Match from here because it comes back right away. This purple block here is going to return like right away. It's not going to wait until the end user actually types something and then come back with the answer. It just comes back right away, because the job of this block here is just to pop that dialog box up, and it just comes back right away. So that means I need an event handler to deal with this, and the event handler is already in a notifier. So when you look under notifier, it has the after text input. That's where we deal with it. Okay. So when we deal with this, there are several things we have to do. First is error checking. We got to make sure that response is actually a number, okay? And it has to be a number that is within the right range. Okay, now there we have another question, right? How many lanes, is in this match? Yep.
You probably would want to have I guess if you're going to have user input, then you'd want to have initializing the variable to establish the total number of lanes, right?
The total number of lanes, can be in the configuration as well. Okay, so I'm gonna hold off that a little bit because sometimes you might want to reuse it. So you can store a profile of different types of matches, and you can say, oh, you know what, I'm going to the same competition, because most people go to multiple competitions in the same region. And each competition has, usually they have a set number, like, okay, with this competition, based on the range, they usually have 15 lanes, the other one usually has 12 lanes, and so on and so forth. So if you can store the profile, that would be nice, okay? So I'm gonna deferring that decision a little bit, okay? And not do the range checking at this point yet, okay? Because, the point is to illustrate how do we do error checking, and also if the error checking it's okay, how do we call the subroutine to actually initialize the list. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to use a control block and a conditional statement here. The first thing we want to know is response even a number? Because if it's not a number, I'm not going to do a single thing. I will just tell the end user, hey, this is not a number, cannot do anything about it. Okay, so we'll go to math, And under math is a particular function or block that says it's a number, which is perfect for this case, okay? So I can now say ask, is the response a number? Because if someone types in ASDF, it's not a number. But if they type in an actual number, it will pass this test, okay? And I'm going to specify an else here, because if it is not a number, I'm not just going to silently do nothing. I'm going to complain a little bit first, and then do nothing. Okay. So I will say, okay, if it is a number, I'm just going to call the subroutine at this point with no error checking. We can always do that later. So at this point, I'm just going to say we'll initialize the match with the response as my starting lane number. Okay. Else, I'm going to complain a little bit. Okay. Well, but Tech, you don't have a label for complaining. I don't need a label. I have a notifier, which is even better than a label, right? So I would just say, okay, let's pick some way to report an error. I don't want to log the error because it's just an end user data entry problem. It's not like I'm losing connection to the network or something that is worth recording. So all I'm going to do is to say, let's just show an alert, okay? And notice, once again, I'm using a literal string here.
What's the difference between a notice and a message?
One asks for a button to click to get rid of it.
Okay.
The other one just shows it for like a half a second or something like that, and it disappears. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one here. You can kind of choose the other one if you think we should display the message and wait until the end user acknowledges, then we can get rid of the message. But it's up to you to decide. So with this one, I'm just going to use the shorter one and say lane number has to be a number, okay, like that. Okay, so now I have enough stuff to actually test the application just to see whether it works or not, right? So we go to the emulator and we long click this particular button until it asks me for the lane number, and we'll just type ASDF, press the OK key, and it complains lane number has to be a number. And that goes away after, I would say that's about, 2 seconds? Yep.
How would you get it to, instead of having to press lane number long press again, how would you get it to show an alert and also call or request a response from you at that point again? Like for instance,
so keep asking you?
Right, within a loop. Some kind of
it's not a loop. You can't really set up a loop
like
when
a while
with
loop.
this type of programming.
Okay,
I think I got your question, but you cannot set up a loop in here, because if you set up a loop in here, but what you can do is to duplicate this block here and just dash it here.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether even this will work or not, because I think the notifier show alert comes back right away too. So it will display the message, and then it will display the dialog box under that. Okay, so you will still be able to read the error message, but there won't be a delay. Okay, we'll give it a try. I mean, I'm kind of curious about this part too, but I think that's the behavior. So we long click, enter something that is not actually a number, and you can see, okay, this is what it does. Okay, which is kind of what you're saying, doing it as a loop. Okay, but it's not a loop in the conventional sense. There's no while or for or do in this case. It just has the behavior of repetitiveness, but it's because the same thing gets triggered over and over again. Okay. If you click cancel, it's the same thing, because cancel reports as a CANCEL, which is not a number. So you might want to catch that one so it doesn't complain. And now I cannot get rid of this one unless I actually enter a number.
You can always have to change cancelable to false. That should work.
Say again?
In the code itself, you have cancelable equals true. Change that to false.
Oh, okay.
Should in theory break the loop.
So it cannot be canceled. So there's only the OK button, but not the cancel button.
Yeah.
Personally, I would like to keep the cancel button, and add one more else if here to deal with it.
Also cancel.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's canceled, then I'm not going to say anything at all. I'm not going to do the initialize match, but I won't complain about it either, because when someone cancels an operation, it means, okay, I did not mean to do this, so let's not do it, right? So I personally, I prefer to do it this way rather than not presenting the cancel button at all.
Yeah.
So to do this way, you have to basically go to text, because now we are matching the text here. So we have to look for equality, and we are checking response and see whether it is the same as cancel, and I think it has to be uppercase C-A-N-C-E-L.
Yeah.
So it has to be spelled exactly the same way, C-A-N-C-E-L, and that's not going to do anything. Or you can always say, if it's not a number and it's not canceled, then complain about it. I mean, that's the other way to do it. Okay. But I personally also would not do this. Keep it in a loop, because it can be annoying. Someone, I mean, they can now click the cancel button to really get out of the whole thing. But I would just complain and say that's not a number. If they want to do it again, long press the button again. I mean, do it as they mean it, right? Alright, so let's double check again, because every time I implement something or fix something, I want to check it again, right? So I just want to click the cancel key, and the correct behavior, the intended behavior, is not to complain that cancel is not a number and it simply disappears and nothing happens, right? And that's exactly what happens. So it is working. Okay, so that part is definitely working. All right, so now we can move on and kind of deal with the updating of lane number, target, and attempt number. Okay, because we have to update those elements on the screen as well. And to make this application, for class purposes, and also, for the application, we want to make it a little bit larger, just so that it's easy to read. I mean, we have all this stuff all this space on the screen and not being used, so might as well make use of it, right? I don't have use of this label anymore, because I can always use this to reflect the lane number. Okay, so I don't want to have too many items on the screen when one is not 100% necessary. So I get rid of this one. People might want to reset the target too, so they might want to go back and say, you know what, I made a mistake. The number that or the score that I enter for the other target is actually incorrect. Like I got the wrong one, and or I saw the target did not fall after a shot, but you know what? That's because I heard the other lane firing, and I thought my partner fired that one shot. Okay, it happens all the time. Okay. Because some guns are louder than others, sometimes and it can also happen like the other way. Okay, your partner could have fired, and because air guns are so quiet, sometimes you don't even notice that your partner has already attempted one shot. That would be a more serious problem, because now okay, did the target fall or not? So we can also turn these into buttons, right? So we'll go ahead and turn those into buttons too. And this one is also going to use 20-point font and change it to target number. And you can always make it more specific. Okay, so we are counting from left to right. Okay, so target 1 is the left one, and target 2 is the right one when there are only 2 targets. Then we have no use of the text element anymore, or the label element, so we get rid of that one. And change label to rename it to button target. And because when someone presses this button, it will allow someone to reset the target to a different number. Okay, so if the program already determined this is target 2, we can now hardwire and turn it back into target 1. Okay. Same thing with attempt. We'll get rid of the label and use a button in its place. Go change the size of the font and change the name to attempt number. There we go. And report score, I suppose we can change it to just change the font size for now. Okay. So now we have all of this stuff here. When someone long press the starting lane, we have to reset all of the other ones. Okay. All right. So let's figure out how we can do that. And by the way, this is what is displayed initially, and it won't be there for too long. But I do want to kind of make it consistent, so and use uppercase to start with each one, or I can choose to use lowercase. I just don't want it to be mix and match like that. Okay. All right. Next thing we want to do is to change the labeling so that it is correctly reflecting the current state of the match. Okay. Go to blocks. And it can be done, within Initialize Match, but I'm not going to do it that way. I'll turn it into its own subroutine because I will need that logic several times. Okay, because every time I enter a new score, I want to bump up the numbers and reflect the updated information. So I want to turn it into a subroutine. Okay, and the subroutine is going to be just a regular procedure. It doesn't have to return anything. So I would just say update match information, and it's going to require several parameters. Okay, there are two ways to do this. One way is to have the parameters reflecting the lane number, target number, and the temp number. That's one way to do it. So I would have 3 parameters. The second way to do it is to have a list, a key value pair list being passed to it. Okay, so the second way is better because I already have a list to keep track of all of this stuff here. But I would not use the global variable just in case we don't want to use the global variable. This gives us an option of not using it. Okay, so I will input a parameter here, and it will be a KV pair that is reflecting the match information. Okay, so the prefix of KV means it's a KV pair, a list of KV pairs. Okay. And I'm repositioning this so I can look at how I initialize these strings here. One problem with graphical programming is it's going to be pretty hard to print this program out. Has anyone even tried to print a program like in App Inventor 2? No? Yeah, me neither. There's a way to rearrange things so it would arrange all vertically.
No, I have done.
Yeah, but I'm not going to click that button, okay? I'm just showing you where it is. Because once you rearrange everything vertically...
And then do it.
Huh?
And just make a copy and then do it.
Yeah, I can do that too, yep. Because it... Yeah, but this is the problem of logic of a graphical programming is it's not like text where you can say, oh, give me a listing. Okay, I print from line 1 to the last line of a program. This is like it's all over the place. And right click, there's no even print available here, and the only way to print it is to go to here and then do the print from here. And if you look at the preview, it only prints a portion of the screen. It's just whatever the browser is displaying. It doesn't show you the entire program. So that's one main disadvantage of this type of programming is you can't really show the whole thing. There is a way to show more, but still it's not going to be a final solution. You can always press the zoom out button on the browser. So it will basically shrink until most things fit on one screen. So that's one way that you can kind of try, but once your program gets more and more complex, even this method is not going to work. So there is definitely distinctly a problem with this type of approach. Okay, so getting back to update match information. So I need to go to the KV match information parameter and retrieve the values of lane number, target, and temp. Okay, I already have a block to do this. Okay, or I should say, App Inventor has a block to do it already. So if you go to lists here, we go all the way to the bottom, we have lookup in pairs already implemented. Okay, this is already done for you. App Inventor has this feature already. So we could just use that, to update, all the labels of the buttons. We'll just go for the most straightforward way of doing things at this point. Okay, we'll do some refinements, possibly later. So what we'll do is we'll go to, okay, I'm missing one. I did not rename one of them. The 10 number. Okay, this one I did not rename, so I'm going to rename that one too, because this way we know which button we are dealing with. Attempt is the M here. Okay. So back to here. Now we can set the labels of all of those buttons. So the first one is lane number. So you just go to set text to, and it's going to be the lane number in KB match information. But I can't just use that number, because otherwise I end up with 3 numbers on the screen, and it's not going to be very clear. So what I need to do is to use a join operation, and go to text and use a join operation. It's going to have 3 components in the join. Yes, this is the kind of the tedious part, and it will have to join. Go back to the designer screen. Oh, there we go. So it starts with lane, and then the pound sign. The pound sign we can get rid of. Okay, it will be the actual number, and then the suffix will be long press to set starting. Okay, so we will have to kind of preserve all of that. So we go back here, and once again I use literal string, which is not the best idea, but in this case it's not the main focus, so that's why I'm going to use this way. The second item is going to be the actual number. So now I have to go to this, go all the way to the bottom, and use the lookup feature to look up based on the tag. And this is going to be the lane number. So I use a lane number string as the key, and I use match information as the pair list. And if it's not found, I don't really need to show anything here, so I will just go ahead and specify empty text, okay, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to be empty. And then the last part, if you go back to the designer, is a space and then in parentheses long press to set starting. So now we go to text again, drag it over, which is here. A space and then long press to set starting, like so. Okay, that's a lot of work just to set the label of a button, but it's worth the trouble. Now you might notice that I could have used almost the same logic here to set the initial string, the one that has a pound sign in it. So that means if you pull this logic out into its own subroutine, that can be helpful. Okay, that can make your program easier to read and can be helpful. But at the same time, when you want to track down some problem, now you have to track down multiple levels instead of everything is in one single procedure. I'm going to test this first. Okay. After we set the initialization, we'll go ahead and call update match information. Okay, to update everything on the screen. So we go to procedures, and then we say update match information right after we set or initialize everything. And then what we'll do is to pass global match information to update match information, because that's how we keep track of the match information. So we'll pass it along like this. And that's all we need at this point for testing it. And it has crashed out again. Oh, well, this is a good time to ask this question. Do you guys know that Android 5 is out?
Mm-hmm. Lollipop.
Mm-hmm. Lollipop. Yeah, my wife could not, stand, the dialog box that pops up, every so often, like, do you want to upgrade? Do you want to upgrade? And she actually ended up upgrading, and in the process, lost, some of the settings. For whatever reason, texting was turned off. There were a few other things. I haven't got time to look at it yet. Has anyone updated to Android 5? Do you like it?
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's pretty, okay.
Yeah.
But functionally, is it any different from Android 4?
It seems nicer. Like, I don't know, they've added some features. Basically, it seems like they cherry picked a lot of the features that the community has brought in the various like forms of CyanogenMod and AOKP and all those guys. Like, they added a flashlight functionality natively.
Oh.
So you can do in a pull down menu, just hit your flashlight. They're really working on like integration with all devices and making it like a smart universe kind of thing. So you can cast your screen really easily to a Chromecast. There's like a button where
that
just,
can
like,
be useful.
Yeah, you could probably use it in this class. I don't know, like you could hook a Chromecast up there or what, but basically cast your screen like it's nothing. I mean, it's just a button. And so you could be watching Netflix and then get home and sit down in front of your TV and just cast your screen and keep watching Netflix.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool.
But they're really pushing that the whole modern, what do they call it? It's like the modern design. It's their whole visual language that they're working to develop for apps to give everything sort of a unified look. It's like their whole set of standards that they're establishing. That's
Okay.
a big deal.
Well, that will make the next class, 363 more exciting because basically I have a new set of stuff to teach because with each revision of Android, they introduce new things, and they have a weird way of maintaining backward compatibility too. So in the next class we'll talk about that. But before we leave today, we'll double check and make sure that everything we did today works. Okay, so we'll set the lane number to, let's say, 14. Press the Enter key, and you can see, now the first button has a label of lane 14. Long press to set starting. I didn't bother with the other ones, but you can kind of see, the other ones are just kind of pretty much copy paste and change a few things. But the approach does work. Okay, so this is good. This is good news. But we haven't really gotten to the part where this application can recover from a crash, okay? Because I do want it to be able to recover from a crash so that people don't lose the entire match, because a particular mobile device decides to die on the last lane of the match. That would be pretty sad. Yes.
There's some things that you put so far that have been really helpful. Can you publish this today?
Absolutely.